greed and lust and avarice, but the New World Order, like a symphony conductor, knows how to play all those different factors together in a type of three-level chess where they're looking forward long-term, and they're also willing to make sacrifices.
The only thing that I find troubling about any conspiracy is the fact that I've never seen a group of people able to work together, to be quiet enough for long enough where it doesn't come out and get exposed in some way, shape, or form.
Well, I totally agree with you. I absolutely, totally agree with you. That's why people got off the ships in San Diego after the Gulf of Tonkin when they rotated back a year later. And the captain of one of the ships and some of the top officers said it was totally staged. No torpedoes were fired at us. And so the truth did come out, just like I've interviewed police officers and firefighters and medical workers that said they heard the countdown to blow up Building 7. And now even a Fox News reporter admitted, okay, well, there was going to be a countdown to blow it up, but since it fell on its own, we didn't have to blow up Building 7 on 9/11. So I agree with you. This stuff all comes out.
I don't agree with that whole thing as far as Building 7 goes and the World Trade Center being rigged for explosives, because it just doesn't make sense that something on that grand of a scale, when you know the facts about building demolition, you could not possibly plant that much explosives in a building that is operating. I don't care if there was some people taking some days off and some floors were closed and there were maintenance crews. When you watch a building being demolished, it takes weeks, if not months, of prep work by professional.
And now all you need is some jet fuel. And even though the firefighters reported that most of the fires were out and people were standing in gaping holes in the North and South Tower, waving white shirts, calling for help, suddenly those giant 4-foot-around columns shattered and were projected 600 feet into other buildings. And they didn't find any body parts bigger than about an inch because the explosives were so high-powered.
Well,
Tower 1 and 2 were non-conventional, massive explosives, top-down. Building 7 was a classic controlled demolition, and, of course, the CIA was based in the building.
See, I absolutely cannot accept that. I accept the fact that it was extremists that hate our way of life, hate our country,
hate our freedom,
of course, and flew planes into buildings, and the buildings were not set up to take that kind of heat, not melting till the point of liquid, but enough to weaken the structure so that when it did collapse, when you have that much weight falling onto itself, you're going to get pieces of metal flying out as if there was an explosion, because literally it is the power of an explosion. You're getting that much energy is being dispersed out of the building.
Well, did you know that NIST had given all those reasons, the pancake, and they said Tower 1 and 2 were hollow, which wasn't true, and now they've had to reverse all that. And on Building 7, they've given 6 different reasons and had to reverse it. I mean, if you look at Building 7, we interviewed the deputy head of emergency management, Mr. Jennings, in New York, Barry Jennings, and then about a week later, he mysteriously died after we aired the interview with him. And he talked about how they blew up Building 7, and, of course, then he died mysteriously.
How then was this explosives, these explosives brought into these buildings?
Well, I mean, let's talk about 7. It had the FBI, NSA, CIA, Defense Intelligence. It was the biggest single U.S. intelligence building, private intelligence building in the world. Most buildings of that size, 47 stories or more, are completely government installations like Fort Meade with the NSA and others. The entire building was a giant spook command base.
Yeah.
You like that little ding-ding there?
I absolutely do.
Is that the Pavlovian conditioning? Hey, guys, but I also want to tell you, I am on XM. They are 1 hour, my syndicated radio show, also at night, but I really appreciate you guys out of the gates plugging that. You guys, also, the websites are Infowars.com and PrisonPlanet.com, and that's where people can actually go and look at the information that we actually cover. I mean, I was talking 10 years ago when they got rid of Glass-Steagall, actually 11 years ago, with economists about how the IMF and World Bank had gotten rid of Glass-Steagall type legislation in third world nations by design, gone in and paid off governments to do it, so the private banks could come in and sell derivatives to the countries to financially destroy them. And now we have the Goldman Sachs Timberwolf emails. We have the McClatchy newspaper emails that they got, where Goldman Sachs premeditatedly sold derivatives to destroy their competition and to collapse the economy so they could consolidate power. And now the new banking re-regulation legislation, even the Washington Post admits, allows the private Federal Reserve to fully take over any banks or institutions they wish and gobble up their competition. That's why the Texas Banking Association president 2 months ago wrote an editorial saying this is a criminal takeover by the very central banks that engineered the financial collapse. But we hear on the news, oh, Obama's getting tough on those rascally bankers. He's going to show them by giving them even more power. It'd be like if somebody robbed a bank and the police showed up and said, wait a minute, you just stole $1 million. We're going to give you a truckload of gold bars to punish you and 15 hookers. How does that sound?
Can I ask Alex a question? This is off the subject. It's something I wanted to ask in the beginning, then we got into 9/11. What made you a conspiracy guy? Like, because to me, my issue with conspiracies is that it seems like a lot of times people become so invested in the idea that a conspiracy must exist that their agenda becomes proving a conspiracy as opposed to seeing sometimes plain and simple facts in the other direction. Now, you seem to be a very well-informed guy. Like, what put you on the road to like thinking that there's a lot of conspiracies? And I believe that some of them you're probably very right about. Well,
that's a really good question. Number one, I played football and drank beer and everything else in high school, but I also, because my mom's got a degree in history, I happened to see a lot of history books laying around from the time I was about 11. And I started reading history books voraciously instead of fiction. And I read Gibbon's Rise and Fall of the Roman Empire, Rise and Decline of the Roman Empire, Shearer's Rise and Fall of the Third Reich, Heinz Hobel's Order of the Death's Head. I read the secret wartime report that had been declassified around that time, The Mind of Adolf Hitler. I read about the Japanese imperial system. I studied the Aztec kingdom and all of the subterfuge and conspiracies and the ruling classes and how they engineered societies even thousands of years ago. And then in my high school, I never really did drugs. I smoked pot here and there, but I'd been to parties where people were using drugs. And I also hung out when I was in high school, with college kids. And so I would see the police who I'd see do drug raids at my school. I would then drive across the lake from Rockwall to Rowlett, and I'd see the same cop at a college party selling cocaine. And so then I found out that the sheriff was dealing cocaine, that the police were involved, and later they did go to prison for it. But so I saw them doing drug raids at the school and busting kids for, half a joint or a roach, and then I saw them parading around on the news as our saviors when I knew full well by the time I left Dallas and moved to Austin, that the police, and then later I found out, I knew I had some friends who had older brothers who were drug dealers in Dallas, and they said, of course, we get our marijuana and other drugs from the Dallas Police Department out of the drug lockup. And then I would see the news saying it's ridiculous, police don't deal drugs. And then later I read about Serpico and other cases, and I interviewed famous New York detectives where in the 60s and then again in the 70s, they had to fire over 75% of the vice squad in New York because they were dealing drugs and running wars. But then the news told me the police don't deal drugs. Then in 96, I watched the congressional hearings where the CIA Solicitor Inspector General admitted that the CIA shipped in the majority of the cocaine during the 80s and gave the crack cocaine recipe to people, and then later interviewed Freeway Ricky Ross and others. And look, now on Fox News, I have video. You can just Google Fox News admits Pentagon growing opium, and it's so in our face now. They have Geraldo go, I'm going to talk to this colonel in the Marine Corps. Colonel, so you're guarding the opium. Yes, we don't like it, but we actually help them grow it now. And if we don't grow it and ship it out, then Al-Qaeda will get the opium money. So, okay, whatever. You decriminalize it, then Al-Qaeda, Al-Qaeda, that we admittedly created in the 80s, they won't be making money off of it because it won't be illegal anymore. I mean, now Reuters, AP, New York Times all admit our government grows the frickin' smack and ships it in. I'm tired of it. I'm tired of it. They're drug dealers. They got the drugs illegal so they can get higher prices shipping it in.
Can I say, if you didn't say how'd you say it?
Al-Qaeda.
If you didn't say we created in the 80s, I just never would have gotten the fact you were saying CIA. But that made me go back and think it.
Al-Qaeda. I got to ask you, what is the end game here? Because it seems like all of these are somehow tied in to this giant power grab. Who is the head of this? Where is it going? Why haven't we gotten to the point where this entity, this thing that is doing all this, has ultimate control? Where is the end game in this whole big picture?
Social Darwinism, the final revolution. I have literally over 100 government-financed textbooks like Eco Science by John P. Holdren, the current White House science czar, where they say a planetary dictatorship. The Financial Times of London had an article titled just last year, "And Now for